Good evening, everyone. Okay. Hello. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Um, so I'm gonna quickly introduce about Telangana Photographic Society. Telangana Photographic Society, formerly known as Andhra Pradesh Photographic Society, was formed in the year 1957 by late Raja Trembak Raj Bahadur and his friends. So the society has been working towards advancement of passion for photography and believes in knowledge shared is knowledge gained. So this is practiced through monthly sessions, discussions, and outings. So today TPS brings live Instagram session, conversing with the masters, and we are honored and glad to have Samar Jodha with us today. Samar Jodha is a photographer, filmmaker, installation artist, and a TED speaker. For over 2 decades, Samar has used his practice to highlight the voices and issues of the marginalized. He is also keenly invested in the youth, a group that he believes has the power to lead and enable social impact. His mission on Red Balloon has emanated from his long-held vision of using art for positively impact the society. With this, he has given his vision a platform, creating a collaborative ecosystem which is critical to large-scale mobilization and impact. With art and design at its core, Red Balloon builds partnership, raises awareness on critical issues, and enables individual leadership to lead change. So I'll quickly request Samar Jodha to join. 1 second. Okay, we are waiting. Yeah.
There we
Hi,
go.
Samar.
Sorry,
Hi.
I cut my head off. Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna turn off the comments and the audience can ask questions afterwards after a talk.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. Just a second. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good too. So, you have done so much, you have traveled so much from TED Talks to books and everything. But all this started, I think, from your photography education from one of the doyens of photography in Hyderabad, Mr. Rajan Babu. Would you like to tell something about your experience with him?
Yeah, I actually discovered photography when I was in a very fancy school in East Africa on foothills of Kilimanjaro. And
Oh,
when I came back to India, of course, this photography wasn't that successful, but I really liked the idea of making prints. And I think when I came back to India, I was looking for photography. Obviously, I wasn't looking to go and become an engineer or a whatever conventional thinking, which most of our Indian mindset at least used to be that time. So I
yeah.
basically looked around and my father used to work for Ecrisat, which a lot of people in Hyderabad know. He's an economist. Unfortunately, he's no more. And he was, they had a very massive. It was a big international institute. They had a very massive photography department, and somehow the connection happened, and I ended up meeting Rajan Babu at Lagrigapur, which is where his studio and school used to be. So this was in 1982, and this. I mean, I didn't know really about what kind of photography I wanted to do. He was an industrial photographer. He was teaching, basic photography, which is black and white mostly, still life portrait and all that, and some of the stuff on we would go to, on location kind of stuff. But I kind of stuck around because I just didn't know what else to do. And he took me out for assisting jobs. We used to go on his little Vijaya scooter. I used to be carrying all the tripods in the back and the little light over we had. And we used to shoot on film those days. And the films used to be processed at his lab, which was, and that's where I met some really amazing people. I met, Vishwendra Reddy. I met, Arvind Chenji. Quite a few of them, a lot of photographers who are obviously very, very successful professionally today.
Yeah.
Post that, I think I spent, I think something I really learned from Rajan Babu was, the craft of what picture making is, what darkroom is, what print making is. And he was a master at that. He also introduced me to this space, what you represent. We used to do these photography salons and all that. And I used to be the one, India was suffering through socialism, so they couldn't send money. So I remember people would send, transparencies with, $3 or $6 wrapped around with a rubber band in an envelope. It would arrive. Keep a note of it. It was kind of a, so we did one big massive salon. It was a really great learning experience. I was still a teenager. Also, Raju Babu really helped me. I actually applied for what you call as Royal Photography Society. It gives out fellowship and associate, and so I was a student, so I got a LRPS from that, and still associates, and that kind of set me off. And I, the portfolio I had, which I landed up at NID in 1985, and I took that portfolio with me, and it was weird because at NID they had, I think, about 800 people apply for this photography, space, student rather. And they called, I think, about 40 of us, and then 4 were taken in. And I was on that UNIDO fellowship, and we had all these Nikon kits and Hasselblad kits and Sinar kits and studio and personal lab, printing space, and tuition was paid, supplies were paid. And I think they gave some $1,500 or $2,000 as a stipend. So it was little too much, but NID was my first exposure to an institution where I did work with some really amazing photographers who came visiting, teaching, people like Hardev Singh, and there was late Vilas Bhinde, and then there was Sudhir Ramachandran. So these were the people who were obviously, very, they were at the peak of their career, and fortunately they came and, they did some amount of teaching, or let's say at least we kind of got exposure to what this thing is all about. And then we basically went to, on one of I think Festival of India or something was going on. So we did a lot of location work. We had these faculty come from Austria, museum photographers and all that. So that was, and the reason I think I got into NID was, I was like about 18, and other people older to me, and I carried this black and white portfolio. And when I laid out, in the interview room, they just couldn't believe the prints. They were like, "You made this." And obviously, I got that great lesson from Rajan Babu, who was a great craft master, and he was an amazing artist. I think he really had impacted so many photographers. And it's nothing to do with how big or small you become. I think personally, he was really quite a start to what I do today.
Yeah, we were exposed to some of his prints the other day. Like, we have a monthly meeting, so on every second Saturday we meet. So in one of the sessions, we had his prints, so we could see them. Of course, they were digital, but yeah, we could get the amount of work that he does on his prints. So from there, I think you moved on as an advertising photographer, right?
Yeah, but from there, I was at NID after a year. I was out of there, and then I went off to the US. I went a bunch of schools to some art school and design and film school and photo schools, and I did that for a few years. And I basically got out of. Finally, I wanted to go and work with somebody, so I ended up, first I started working with 2 Irish photographers, and there were studios. This is, I'm talking about, the 80s, late 80s, where studios were very specialized. There were studios in New York City which only shot beer, And and especially going from Indian market where we didn't have this, because obviously market is very different here. I wasn't exposed to any case, and I think very limited to Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore kind of a thing. So I think I had a amazing experience working with. So I was working for catalog studios and stuff like that. Computers was just taking off, so there was a lot of those catalogs were there. And then somehow I managed to get a break after a lot of running around. There's this guy called Clint Clements, who was probably at that time was in the top 5 car photographers in the world. And I think he was some great grandson of Mark Twain or something like that. So Samuel Clemens. So anyway, he lived on a boat, and he really lived a lifestyle of what a big commercial photographer would be in Boston Harbor, which is where he used to live. And the usual thing used to be that if you want to join him, then you spend 6 months cleaning his boat and all that stuff. So unfortunately, I didn't have to clean the boat. But picking up laundry, dropping kids, picking up his car, all that. So because assisting jobs are not, in that society, for whatever reason, the population is very differently structured. So they don't have, people can't afford it. India, where there's so much of disparities and all that, so people get all kind of help. But for an assistant, it was really good. And it was not about how good you are at loading film and all that stuff. That's the easy part of it. It's about how you can build stuff. How can you, build a set? How can you paint backdrops? So these are really, so a lot of them would be people who came from very strong, let's say, at least a mind of an engineer, not necessarily as a degree, or industrial designer and all that stuff. And so I was with him for some time. I was like, I think 4th assistant, down the road. So he would only speak to me when he needed his car picked up or something had to be dropped off. But it was great, 16, 18-hour day. Mostly, the money was really great. You didn't have 0 expenses, and you traveled. You went all the way from the islands, and depending on what job it was. But 1989. Was it 89? No, 1990. I actually got an amazing break with him because they were taking, he had this piece of land overlooking basically a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean on Rhode Island. And I think it was Rhode Island, yeah, Little Compton, this small little town. And we set up this outdoor studio, and in came 2 trucks from Wisconsin with 40 Harley Davidson motorcycles. And we spent 2 weeks, the summer of 1990, in the sun, just photographing these Harley Davidsons. And these are really detailed jobs, there's a lot of money involved, obviously. The client is there, they, all that stuff. So that was a great learning experience for me because I just wanted to see what it is like to run a studio like that. And I think then I had this sudden awakening that, man, it's time to get out of this because it was getting too comfortable. Money was great, you traveled, and it didn't matter if you had to, be awake for 2 days, 2 nights continuously. It didn't matter. So I wanted to really do books, and I thought, let me come back to where else would I go is India, and I thought, let's go back and here commercial thing what you were asking me earlier. So when I arrived here, either it was Delhi or Bombay. And Bombay was very, at least at that time for me, Bombay was very hardcore commercial space for within India. But Delhi offered something totally different. I was new to both the cities in any case. But what Delhi offered was that it was a center for art and culture, a lot of publishing here, every international agency out here, where there's culture centers and stuff like that. So I took the call and came to Delhi instead of Bombay. And because I didn't want to be, a commercial guy, I think that I kind of figured out pretty early. But you have to pay your bills, so you gotta, do that stuff. So it was great. I arrived here. I had a little car portfolio, all these large format, and I met here Dev Singh, of course, was really kind, and he looked at my work and he said, "You have a camera, large format Samar?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Then forget it. What do you come?" I said, "I came to assist you." So he said, "There's no assisting. You already know. Go for it. This is not that kind of." So I landed out there. Then I went, there was a very amazing designer. Unfortunately, he's no more, Rohit Khosla. So I met him, and he introduced me to Prabhudo, who's obviously is an amazing photographer. Unfortunately, he's no more. And Prabhudo basically put me in touch with some of the agencies and all that. And he was going off on a YSL fellowship to Paris. So he put me in front of contract advertising. And that was a very hotshot agency at that time. And there were all these amazing creative people. So I started working there, but I think again it was comfort, and that comfort kind of puts your head into numbness, and that I'm talking in my 20s actually. So by mid-20s, I managed to get a book out, which was on Jaipur, which was it's called Jaipur, The Last Destination. It's one of those big, large format coffee table books. And it was basically done with Amarnath, who was a writer on it. And that's where I realized collaborations are very important, because in creative space, it's very easy to become me, myself, and I, because, we start taking that too seriously. And I think collaborations are also showcases what kind of tolerance you have. And fortunately, this profession or all the stuff I do, there is a room for collaboration. It's not being a painter where you cannot have another guy's brush coming into into your canvas, right? So I spent 2 years. I had that book out, and then we basically started working with. Because of that one book, then I got some more books and blah blah. So I started just developing more on that. So commercial space kind of. So I kind of spent time in Bombay also, because because I had this, as I said, that car portfolio, but there was nobody really spending money on cars, because there were no cars at that time. Spend, as you can imagine, you were probably not born that time, but they didn't. Any ambassador was hardly doing. So the only car which would spend money was Contessa. So we hired this studio in Noida, take the car to some location somewhere and all that stuff. But it was good money. But it was just. I think I was just getting very tired of too much of art direction, because agency business works with art direction because they have to get approvals of the client and the people who are paying the bills, so they don't want surprises by some photographer trying out something new. My market was tough. I mean, it was a very different space. The pie was much smaller, unlike now it's much bigger, but also has its own challenges. So that was a round of commercial work.
Yeah, and apart from books, you were also shooting or doing social, photography on social causes. And one such project of yours is called as Bhopal, a Silent Picture. And yeah, so I wanted to know what motivated you to take this particular project and showcase it in a way that you did, like a multimedia installation. So, what was the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so see, how it started was when I was doing commercial photography. I was doing a lot of work for hotels and lifestyle, and they were whatever the chains were in India, Oberoi, Taj, because none of these Marriotts and Four Seasons hadn't arrived yet. So one was working. They had properties across the world too, Bali and all those places. So I would go to all these different places, but I think what started happening very quickly was that I was getting pretty tired of these over-saturated, over-styled, because that's the calling, because you're selling a hotel room. So, obviously it needs to be really shiny and how. But I think I started realizing a period of time that this was not my calling. And, while traveling to these places, I worked on another book with Ritu Kumar, who's a very well-known fashion designer. So, and she's not a fashion designer, she's a lot more. She's a textile person, and she's a very big authority on what she does. So I started, so there was a lot of learning from there. What I had seen at NID, I wasn't doing textile there, but, I think kind of connected here. Yeah. And that gave me huge exposure to communities, weavers and people who are craftsmen and all that stuff, which we wouldn't know. I mean, I remember going to, unfortunately, I'm really, really bad at names, unlike other people. I remember we went to Bhuj to this master craftsman who was a block maker. And I couldn't believe it took forever to go in that beat up Ambassador, getting there, middle of this dry place, hot and all that. And he had all these Japanese magazines around and all that. And middle of that, this man, guess who? I mean, Issey Miyake, who's one of the most amazing known Japanese designer, fashion designer, textile, everything designer. He would come and visit this guy middle of nowhere, and that kind of started to expose me that there is a lot more. It's not about living in big cities. And I'd lived in many different big Boston, all kinds of cities before. So I think that kind of started doing a lot of shift, and I ended up doing a lot of photography with these. But unfortunately, it was still film. And what advantage of the film was, unfortunately, now of course a different space. I also do a lot of digital stuff. But I think what film used to do was that when you approached your subject, one, it was expensive, so you couldn't just blow up. Unlike now, you just carpet bomb and boom, boom, and you come back on your screen and you throw out whatever you want or not. with film, the engagement was very different. When you were with your subject, whether it's architecture, whether it's people or whatever, your whole connect was just very different because it was a lot more inner, connect rather than let me get it done. Okay, if I miss this, I'll get the next one. So I think that really helped. Also, I mean, that as far as the film goes, and obviously the subjects. And parallelly, I started working on something which became something called Ageless Mind and Spirit, which was part of TED Talk and all that stuff. And that was, again, and I really would want to tell this to young photographers, that don't get caught up. The big problem I find is that it doesn't matter which profession you are in, any of the creative stuff, whether it's a musician, dancer, photographer, film writer, whatever it is, do not keep your goalpost that, okay, I'm going to make a book out of it, or I'm going to have a show out of it, or I'm going to do blah, blah. Because what happens is you miss out the entire journey because your whole mission is, and that goes with everyone. I have, some amazing artist friends, painters, and their mind is like, oh, I've got a show at 2022. Okay, I got to churn out, 50 paintings. And then of course, you know how to do it. But I think it's not really so much about yourself. Then you are really caught up in what the market and what the likes and whatever the hell it is. And I think that is really, really critical. So even that Ageless project, it didn't start as a book or an exhibition. And my brother, Vijay Jodha, who was, he was from JNU, then he was also from, obviously, I went to Hyderabad Public School and all that stuff. So he was out in NYU Film School. He came back and then we created this collaboration. He's got a very strong research background. And we identified and we worked over next 8 years on and off, obviously. Photographing people. We photographed 400 people across the country. And these are all people representing that old age. And old age not in the stereotyping or the cliched space, but we are talking about the disappearing world, the culture, the people, the communities, the skills, the way of life. And also the larger issue was that, India doesn't have, social security system to sustain old people. So it was a much more deeper sense that, why not go and look at people and who are still working, who are still productive. And we came across, so I worked with, let's say, Pandit Ravi Shankar and Bismillah Khan also. And we worked with, with a widow in Vrindavan also. So it's not about their big names or some disaster pornography or something. But it was a combination of, various people. My brother did all the research and he did all the text with it. And then it became an exhibition. And then, we went to Dalai Lama. He wrote a beautiful foreword for the exhibition. And then it became a book after that. So the reason I'm giving you these building blocks is that, this is how things graduate. You cannot go with this thing, oh, I got this great idea. I'm going to go do this. And then what's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to make a book out of it. And it defeats the purpose because the reason you see great masters of anything, any profession, people who are real masters. I mean, I'm no master. I know you have the series, but I'm no master here. But when you see the masters out there, I think, none of them were bothered about how their work is going to be received. Many of them actually did the most beautiful piece of writing or music or whatever. The poor guy was dead. He died or she died in poverty. But that work got recognized because their focus was very different. It's very difficult in the times we live in because temptations are so much and the insecurity and how am I perceived and people are, am I looking right, am I looking wrong, all that stuff. And it puts a lot of pressure. So, I mean, it takes a lot to keep yourself within because see, finally, any creative space, what is it all about? It's finally finding your own voice. And that voice is the struggle. You got to keep working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to young people or young artists, young photographers, who would like to take up this path of, trying to build something or do something for the society through their art form?
Right. Well, get a day job because this thing doesn't pay your bills. It costs a lot of money. You were asking about Bhopal. Bhopal is a very good example. I started something really small. I was there. I found out through the research and all that, how these trains were pulling in that night, how people died. So this is what you'd asked me about earlier also about so my work is, I would say it's more experiential art and experiential in the sense that how do you create people to sense what it is rather than feed it on them. It's like disaster pornography. Oh, it's disaster. People are not interested, unfortunately. So we created, this whole 40-foot container, and Bhopal used to be much colder. So as you walk through this cold box, it's temperature controlled, single degree, It's got 3D images of the plant. It's got a voice piece which my brother Vijay had basically made for me, and there are mannequins on one side with stretched fabric with names of people who died. And so, how you take this work is what I'm really talking about. So, earlier there was one little image, then you build, more stuff came together. And 2012, Dow Chemical owns Union Carbide, so they were the sponsors for London Olympics, and they were uh, they own Union Carbide. And when they sponsored London Olympics, nobody talked about the mess they had left behind. So I basically got Amnesty International, and we took this 40-foot container and we put it in east part of the London where the Olympics were. So the idea was, so people ask me that, but what about the Olympics? It's celebration. But yeah, it's celebration. I'm not in a PR exercise. That's a brand building, guys. I don't do that kind of stuff. So the point I'm trying to make is that you find your voice, whatever it is. Nothing to do with that you want to work on some social issues or whatever. It can be anything, whatever it is. But be truthful to it, because if you're gonna work towards only about that, how people are gonna look at it and what kind of commercial whatever is gonna come out of it. Sometimes we lose our principles. Then it's very, very these things don't last. And talking about what you were asking about, that how do you get into and how do you fund it? The way you fund it is that see, you are in photography. Since we're talking about photography platform, you are in photography because it's your passion. Now, don't compromise on your passion. Because when you compromise, then it's not a passion. Then you might as well go sell cement. It's okay, because the guy who's selling cement, he knows exactly how many bags to sell. So I personally believe that, work on something which can take care of it. Maybe it's photography. Maybe you want to be a wedding photographer. Maybe you want to just shoot products, whatever the hell it is, it doesn't matter. But keep your purity very pure. It's so important, because that is the only reason when your work is going to have that serious longing for yourself to begin with. Forget the rest of the world. That's the later part. So I think that the balancing act is something which is required.
Yeah. I think a lot of your work has a philosophical edge to it, and I think that every new photographer should keep in mind and start off their work with. On that line, you have also founded Red Balloon, right? Would you like to talk something about it?
Yeah, so the way Red Balloon evolved was that, for last 20, 25 years, I mean, since the 90s, so, many number of years, I had 50 cameras, that was film days, and I would go and do photography workshops with kids. And I've done that in all kinds of places. I've worked in East Africa with albino kids. The reason I'm doing is this is not about teaching photography. I know very well they can't become, okay, today they're digital, it's much more whatever. But that time when we started off, the exercise, what I do is really about empowerment. It's about, it's just giving them confidence, it's giving them something to celebrate and have fun. Because each of these places I've worked with, I've spent a number of years going in and out of Afghanistan. Education, girl, children, conflict issue happens, how the plug gets pulled onto education. So how we work and we do public art projects where what the girls think about, it's you're giving them that space. Parents are seeing that, oh my God, she can do this. So, I mean, there are many layers to it, of course, or working in, many, I think, late 90s, working in Jordan, with Palestinian kids, or working in Delhi for that matter, in a Bangladeshi rag pickers colony, Bangladesh, Nepal, all kinds of places. So these workshops were something where I was doing this photo exercise. Now, typically it would happen is, I don't speak the language in most of these places. I work with a local church group or NGO or something. So the kids will come, we'll spend 2 days, they get used to the stranger who's come in, and post that we basically give them cameras, I take a printer, we make prints, then we stick it on the wall. The child has to get up and talk about the picture. It's the toughest thing, how do you explain your photo?
Yeah.
Especially in a space where is this photo thing coming? I mean, that's not, most of the kids go to these schools because there's a meal plan, it's because there's food there, there's lunch there or whatever, So that exercise started, and I started doing more of, and typically you do that, then you'd have a little exhibition where these kids would come out in the assembly and show their pictures to all the other kids and all that stuff. Then they get a little prize with all the stationery and all that stuff, and I'll take these images back to, to Dubai or to Bombay, whichever, in New York earlier. So I had, some of these friends who are super, super rich. So they would do a fancy dinner and people would give like $200 a print or something. And so we'd raise that money and go back to the school. So, the model was that. And I did that for a number of years. So Red Balloon basically started evolving out of when I realized more and more that it needs to expand, because I'll be dead tomorrow. How many kids am I going to teach and all? Fine, this is great. I still do it. But why not create, some kind of a platform where we bring in all kinds of creative people with their own set of experiences and their own set of, thought processes. And then why not bring this to the kids? Now, kids are, again, this is nothing to do with privilege or underprivileged. These children I'm talking about, they're just children. And what's the best thing about creativity? It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate on any front. There is nothing like a good artist or a bad artist or whatever. And by the way, all these things, when I work with designers, filmmakers, puppeteers, whoever they are, photographers and all that, they all come in, they are brought in as the creative stuff is a tool, It is not about making into a better photographer, a great artist or a painter or whatever. It's none of that at all. Because the essence, or let's say, what I would say, the DNA of this entire exercise is really issue-based. So we go to a fancy school and there the kids are talking about that, and the kids pick up the issue. We are not telling them. We just give them the tools, how to do it. So these are workshops, 2 day, 3 day, whatever, it can be 10 days, depending. And the kids come up with the issue. And also, this is, I'm sorry, there are so many sides to it. So it's about leadership.
Yeah.
So leadership is what we are really looking for. Now, typically in a school, there's so many schools who do that, okay, kids are talking about that, let's say, plastic, recycle, for example. What happens is that kids will create something, will come back to the school after the summer, and they will put it up in the classroom. You'll get a grade out of it, and then you take that thing and it's forgotten, right? There's no connect to it. It's just another exercise. Schools have to do it because they gotta also pick up all those boxes. Most of the schools, I would say. So what we work is really leadership, where these kids are actually going through this whole exercise, and then they share this, not with just their classroom, maybe school, maybe with the community. They go to a larger platform and see, bottom line, I really believe is that, not me, actually, my whole team at Red Balloon, we really strongly believe is that finally, nobody's interested. A child is not interested if a politician says that, clean your or save your tree, or let's say put up all these posters, save the girl child, blah, blah, whatever it is, or some 50-year-old man coming there and telling that, okay, this is what you should do. It doesn't work. Finally what works is when children talk to children, and that is where the connect is. When I talk about leadership, they are the influencer, they are the advocate for these issues. And that is how I see that, that's what we are working at Red Balloon. And it's a very amazingly open platform, there are 3 or 4 very amazingly committed people who are part of it. And then we are just out there and we bring different people to come and work with us, and just create a much more larger discourse,
Yeah. Yeah, that's so amazing to, just to hear about it. I think a lot of people would, contact you to be a part of it.
Yes.
So how, yeah. All right. Shall we take some audience questions now?
Yes.
And yeah. All right. Okay. I am turning on the comment section so that people can start asking their questions. Yeah. Okay.
I can see everybody's names.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions to Samar, please go ahead and ask. Yeah. Oh, a lot of people are saying hello.
Hi, yeah, I don't think people have any questions because I'm just like, thrown out so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would like to, people can put up the questions, but what I really want to talk to more and more young people is because they are really the ones who are, very, very active on Instagram. And I would really like them to, take certain things about, see, it's very easy for me to come here after putting 30 years of my experience and talk about that, I conceptualized the Burj Khalifa and we were shooting helicopter stuff, all that drama. But reality is this, that when you're young, you wonder, man, how do I get there? It's so easy to hear your stories. In hindsight is easy, you can say. But also, you need to realize is that when I sit here and talk about these things, I've had huge amount of failures. I have had such unbelievable amount of fallings. Whether it's financial, going totally broke, or people messing with your work, or you've been backstabbed, a lot of times being stupid. So the reason I'm saying that is that it's so critical to make those mistakes, because see, in life what happens is that if and that's whether it's people, profession, whatever that is, when you keep going and let's say you arrive, it's great to get these falling downs on mistakes early, because when you are at 60 and later part of your life, if you make mistakes then, it's very difficult to get up, because it's tough. You don't have that energy, you don't have that time, whatever it is. But as a young person, keep failing, keep trying stuff. You have all the time in the world, keep trying it. It doesn't work, doesn't matter, whatever. The other thing I like to talk about photography, that how do you pick subjects, how do you work on long-term projects. So I would say that always, which is something which even I have done, which is like run parallel projects all the time, and don't I'm sorry, but do not treat it as a project, because project means that you're already blocking yourself. When is the project finished? You're putting yourself into the box. So whatever you work on, work parallelly on a lot of things, whatever interests you. And that brings me to one very critical part, which is, where does your politics lie? And politics is not about left and right and all that. Politics is about, what are you in your head? Are you aware of something, or are you just caught up in, and if you're caught up, that's okay. I'm not here to judge anyone. But, if you want to be that creative person with that soul of purity, it is really important that, you basically don't get caught up in, one is how you're going to be perceived. That's one critical part of it. And I think the other thing which also I believe is, sorry, I've got so many thoughts on my head. So going back to, let's say just going back to the basic thing, is that, when you keep trying different things, you will have a huge amount of learning. And also, don't compromise, because you compromise, man, you're just lying to yourself. You have to believe in that, because these things don't last then, they will. And also, what we spoke earlier, what we were talking about, that how does one see in the times we live in, like we all locked up for last month and 6 weeks and all that stuff. I think it's an amazing thing, I don't see it as lock up. I see it as like a pause we are on. And what I really strongly believe, my parents, when I grew up in Hyderabad in the 70s or 80s, I think my parents gave me a great world. They gave me a world where you were listening. There was a world where you were consuming less, wastage was less, choices were little. You didn't have to buy, 50 white shirts or whatever the hell it is, because there's a sale going on in the mall and all that. They gave a pretty decent world to me. But people who are in their 40s and 50s, which is me, I really believe that we are responsible for the mess we are in today. Because it's very easy to tell young people, hey, don't waste plastic. And, when I was young, I didn't have such a choice, and look at you on the phone all the time, blah, blah, all that stuff. But the reality is that, we are the models who have basically put it to them, and we have ruined their world totally, by putting them in that space. So we got a pretty decent world, but what have we given to the next one? So what I believe lockdown is doing is that it is giving us this great pause right now, where we basically connecting with ourselves, with our family, parents, grandparents, all that stuff. And I think, when these doors finally open up, I'm really hoping that there's going to be a certain amount of, of course, the corporates and the rest of the world want to pump up their machines and factories, and, we lost all your business. That is there. That always going to happen. But what choices and what changes are you going to make for yourself is going to be the real thing. And what I believe that, even 10% of people, if they switch, believe you me, the impact can have on, I don't have to drive every day, I don't have to take a holiday every 2 minutes and buy more things and all that stuff, less traffic, less environmental pressure. I think what Paris Accord couldn't do, I think, 10%, 20% people changing their habits on this planet will impact such a massive way how the climate change can actually be captured, or let's say, doesn't go worse. This is my little logic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So a few questions that people are asking is about like, how do you bounce back after the failures? Like how do you or how should one bounce back? And also what motivates you to continue doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So, I think failure, what I mean by failure is, there are lessons learned. A lot of times there are lessons learned, a lot of times you continue working because, see, bottom line is that how much you believe in it. Because it's about your belief system. Rest is all secondary, always secondary. Believe me, everything else secondary. If you believe in it, you keep going at it, you will, as you mature, as you get older, you yourself will do the corrections. And maybe it may happen that after 5 years, you've been writing this book. And after 5 years, you might say that, this is not something which I want to do. So you put it away, you throw it away or whatever it is. But it's not that you haven't learned, because those 5 years you have grown so much to come to that point where you are saying, okay, this is not worth it. So I think it's all about yourself, about your own personal growth, your personal exposure. I also tell a lot of young people, they come to me and they say, oh, which photography school to study and all that. Don't waste your parents' money unless you've got like a huge amount of trust fund. That's a different story. But I believe if you want to learn photography, today technology has made it so easy for everybody to be a photographer, which is great. I think that's brilliant. A lot of professional photographers do think that, oh, it's just total mess, what's happening with the profession, all this stuff. But what I believe is that because the technology has made everybody on one single level, that has really, really helped in terms of coming up with your voice. Earlier there was no voice. And also don't forget, at least when I was in learning photography in Hyderabad, either you have to be rich or an amateur or a professional photographer. These are only three things why you went to a camera, because otherwise there's nothing to do with it, right? But today, because everything has come into digital space, I mean, I can't show you on this phone, but I have over 100,000 pictures on this phone I'm talking. So for 10 years, every year I'm doing at least 10,000 pictures on my phone. It's crazy. I mean, I shoot all the time, of course, but the point I'm trying to make is that don't get caught up in this photo business schools, because half of them are rackets. Unless you're working with a very sensible photographer who's running it, is a very different thing, because there's a larger meaning behind it. They're coming from a certain principle. That is great. So that can be your call. But go and learn something else. Go study philosophy. Go learn literature. I mean, not learn, but read stuff. Do something else. Because this is what is gonna basically create your mind space. And also don't hang out with people who are like, oh, you're wonderful, you're great, because that is another brilliant way to dig your own stupid grave. Because people who think they're gonna be, you can't be, king of the world after all. It's a huge world out there. So I think it's really important that hang out with painters. Go show your work to a philosopher. Go show your images to an architect. Hear what they are saying. Photography is gonna caught up in a stupid thing which I've done it to. Good light, this perspective. Oh, you should shot it this way, a little wider. Come on, man. That's so boring.
Yeah. I think you have answered the question, the typical question of what camera you use, or what is a good camera. Is Nikon better or Canon better? I think you have just answered that question, and So let's move to some other questions.
And I want to say hi to Vineet also here. There's some really brilliant photographers looking. I better be.
So do you still do your?
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Do you still do your commercial work as well on the sidelines?
I fortunately stopped that many number of years back. I think also because I've been doing a lot of other stuff. I've been working with metal, I've been working with films, I've been working with multimedia, all kind of other stuff. So I do get certain amount of commissions. So it's like I did some work with metal workers in Bombay, and then I worked with somebody in Northeast, and that work finally got shown. I worked with this person, Divya Thakur, who was the designer on this project, and we took this show. So I took this show to Venice Biennale, and that kind of got me a lot of commission jobs after that. So a lot of times what happens is that if you have a certain style or you can apply this anything. It's not just about non-commercial work, even commercial. If you have a certain style or certain way you do your things, the clients would be very interested to keep calling you because they connect with your stuff, they connect with your work. And I think that is really important. And that's what I keep going back to, that, have a voice, because when you have a voice, then it'll become a larger, impact on whoever you want to be hired by,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Also, on that note, Monica is asking, you do so many installations and works. Where do you place these big installations after exhibit is over?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm really bad. Like this 40-foot container, it traveled in Europe in 2018. There was a photography Houston Photo Biennale, which is one of the world's biggest photography biennale. So it was in Houston. So we put it on a ship and we send it to Houston. Right now, the container sits in that place. Sometimes I have to pay rent for a lot of these places. Sometimes, a lot of these agencies are very kind to keep it, and these are not shows which can keep opening. You have one opening every year or 2 or 3, depending, where it needs to travel. And a lot of times I junk it actually, because I don't have any place to store any of this stuff. So you showcase, sometimes if it is at, let's say, I was at the India Art Fair or something, and, there's this, a client and a very good friend now, Sanjay Tulsian. So he basically bought the entire 35-foot long wall and he moved to Chennai, So sometimes one is fortunate that people come in and they take it away. Otherwise, you just destroy it, because what do you do with that work? It's just so massive, and it's not something you just roll it up and keep it on your bed, Sorry, a really cool question, which he was saying, composition.
Okay.
Samar, one question for you. Composition versus content. Which one would you choose? This is a very tough question, Vineet, because, you're master of both. Very reserved. I don't know. I think for me, I think if the content is right, the juice is right in there, I think composition automatically works then, but it's not something which I can tell him, but a lot of young photographers, they get very caught up in the composition of things, and I think that kind of takes away from the real essence of what the messaging is. So I really believe, let's say I look at why is photography at one level. I would like to say this also to young photographers. Why is photography so boring for a lot of, the reason why it is boring, I think, is most of photography fails because, unlike painting, what happens with photography is like, if it's a nice picture, you hang it, but it becomes like a poster. You've seen it once or twice, you're done with. What's the difference between a painting and a photograph? Is painting has layers of it. You can keep going back, and there's something new in there. Yeah. I'm talking, successful work, obviously, not some of this dull stuff. But good photographs are, images which have a lot of layers of imagery there, where there's some drama happening, something is connecting, and it can be anything. It can be a plain, simple wall. It doesn't matter. But I think it's very important that when, as a photographer, the images you make, they should have layers of stories, because that's what would sustain your pictures. Obviously you can't do that in commercial work, but that's not what I'm talking about. So I personally believe that if you can focus more on being the true storyteller, rather than, which camera and, all the drama around it and aerial shot and all that stuff. It's not necessarily.
One more question from Manish. He's asking, how was Samar's experience being on TV as a show judge? Do you think shows like this will make people take photography more seriously?
Yeah, so it was like that Nat Geo. I did 2 seasons as a judge on that cover shot. I think Nat Geo's, mandate in so many levels. One is obviously photography. We all know that. So, see, what I believe is that when you're a young person, you sit here, there must be so many young photographers sitting in this crowd here. They are like sponge. They want to hear somebody speak something more. Because otherwise I can be on the internet all day looking at pictures. He's done this, read his history, blah, blah. That's a very dull business. You want to talk. And I do a lot of mentorship. Otherwise, I work with so many young photographers who basically just show me their work. And, I want to know what that person is. And if I can, if somebody who's 18, 20, 25, if I can just slightly tweak their thought in some direction, whatever that is, and then they are amazing, because people have the passion, they have the hunger to do it. It's just that they're so lost today in this noise of what I call as this digital noise. There's just so much of it, and you're just so confused because you think, oh, maybe I'll go on Instagram and get 200 likes. Somebody might notice me because I can't go to a gallery because the guy's not gonna even look at me. Anyway, galleries are so dead, and it's gonna get even worse as we go forward. Oh, I can't publish a book and all that stuff. So it's a very tough space. But don't forget what I was talking about, the noise. You can make the right kind of noise, do something which is different. Then if there are a million things standing outside, if you have something different, believe you me, it's gonna be, definitely noticed. Not today, but down the road it will be. But believe in yourself. Stop getting into this, which I keep saying. I suffer it myself too, because all creative people, see, the DNA of creative people is insecurity. People who not deny it's different, but everybody has it at different levels. I myself have it, So it's really important to keep self-preservation and protecting yourself from all this noise outside. Because if you can do that part, you get stronger inside. I'm not trying to be some spiritual philosopher here, which I'm not. But I think it's more about making sure that your inner voice. You gotta hear your own inner voice before stop putting it out there. What's the point? I mean, that's just amplifying insecurities, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you? Someone is asking. Crazy Bunny, I think. No, one second. That was a very nice question. Which was talking about your next project. I can't find it right now, but any upcoming projects or installations that you have?
Well, there's nothing upcoming because these are all parallels which keep running. I like that Vinny just asked me who's your favorite painter, and for me, I think the favorite painter, because it's very complex work. One which I find is many number of years back is Bosch, because Bosch, I find him as the most complex painter. There's so much of drama, it's like a painting. It can be a photograph. There's so much going on there. I really like that very much. And the other painter, in the same sense, in modern times, I like his Bacon because I think he's got a very strong. Again, layers of it, and bring that thing in go see those things out there. You can see it on the internet. You don't have to go to, Metropolitan Museum in New York or somewhere, but read those stuff and see what these people were doing, what were they reading, what times they were living in, what their, bio was and whatever it is, because my God, there's so much you can learn and, it can impact your work, not just photography. It can impact how you behave with people, how you behave with yourself, forget anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any favorite photographers or any favorite photos that you time and again look at it for inspiration?
Well, it changes, right? So when I was with Rajan Babu, I used to do landscape photography, and there was Ansel Adams, which I think was God for everyone. Then Indian photography, I think I really like Raghuveer Singh because again, he was. He was so ahead of his time even today, and I tell photographers, read his work, see what he was doing 30, 40 years back. There's so much to learn in those things. So, but, I unfortunately, I don't really, I don't have any of this that, did you like, Satyajit Ray better or did you like this filmmaker better? Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, one has seen it and all that stuff, but again, I don't see, and I'm not saying it out of any arrogance or cockiness. But I'll tell you something I never had, because the minute you start getting into this, I'm influenced by this, and sure, you should read and, develop your own thing. But I really very strongly believe that, if you can develop your voice within by reading, listening, seeing whatever it is out there, that has to be the real thing. Stop getting into that, this was a great influence. Okay, for some people maybe it is. But I unfortunately can't even rattle out those names, though I've seen a lot of, I respect, there's so much to learn and all that. Maybe it's all subconsciously, it goes and sits in your head, and when you start looking at things, then it works. But, don't hang on to all these, because one doesn't need another Satyajit Ray, We don't need another Raghuveer Singh. We need you, we need you, what you're going to come up with,
Yeah. I think we
Okay, so
are.
somebody say, when am I coming to Hyderabad? I'm really hoping
Yeah.
to be there. I keep promising myself
Yeah.
every day. So let's see.
Yeah. 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 When you come to Hyderabad, please let us know. We'll have some Irani chai and biscuits
Yeah.
and samosas.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. That was so amazing when I lived there. And I tell you, my biggest thing which I miss about Hyderabad more than anything else is Hyderabadi, the language. Oh, it's like the
Oh.
funniest language in this country, funniest language alive. It's so hilarious.
Yeah. 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 I think everybody is missing it right now because we are all locked up
Yeah,
at
yeah.
our homes. So
Yeah, but
otherwise, if you
go
can,
out, this
yeah.
unlocking will happen. It won't be like, come first or whichever date and the world is be different. It's not gonna be different. It's gonna
Yeah.
be, I mean, it's not gonna be the same. It's gonna be totally different. We have no idea where it's
Different.
gonna
Yeah.
be. So I think, it's really important as a creative person, start doing
Yeah.
things where you will feel good about yourself, because chasing money is fine. Of course, we need to, but, cut down your needs a little bit. You don't need to live that life because you didn't get anywhere. You can be the biggest movie
Yeah.
star like Tom Hanks, and you can be the biggest prime minister, powerful of UK, or anybody. It doesn't spare anyone. You know how this thing has thrown such a massive, it's unreal across the planet. So who am I? So don't take your
Yeah.
work as, I'm gonna be like this big rock star artist, photographer. It doesn't matter, man. Nobody cares about it.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you, whatever number of people out here, some more will follow and all that stuff. You think that's gonna leave any large impact for once I'm gone? Of course not. So don't take yourself too seriously. Take it easy. That's it.
Yeah. Yes, yes. I think we'll have to wrap up this session. Right now, I think the time just flew by. I think we should have more conversation
Yeah,
and
I just have
long
issues with
conversation.
the high. So many
Yeah,
people here.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah. So thank you, Samar, for joining. We hope to see you soon in Hyderabad and,
yes.
have
Well, thanks to
conversation over
all these
chai.
friends of mine whose names have kept popping up between us trying to speak.
Yeah,
And but thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate
yeah,
everybody's time for this.
yeah,
And see you guys soon. Take care.
yeah,
Be safe, as they say.
yeah. Thank you so much, guys. See you soon on the next session. Thanks, Samar.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.